right, everybody, welcome back. All right, as we move into our next and final section for the day, I want to do something a little different and kind of explain why I'm doing it. So as we move into our next section, I've mentioned before about the vast number of resources that are available out there to you when it comes to learning and getting into cybersecurity. We talk about, kind of, if you go back to my video several weeks ago, right, we talked about the 4 things that you can do to get started in cybersecurity. And one of those things was going out there and doing a lot of self-learning. I love to answer questions. I love to interact with folks, and I love to really talk about, their experiences, what they're doing, how they're getting involved in cybersecurity, and I really love to share my journey with them and help them kind of find their own way, and kind of give them, pointers and breadcrumbs and things like that to do. I love to do panels. I've done hundreds of panels throughout my entire career. It's one of the most fun types of speaking engagements that I can do. You'll almost always catch me if you're offering an opportunity to sit on a panel. I'll almost always take an opportunity to sit on a panel. I absolutely love it. One of the reasons for that is because I love to get asked questions and I love to answer them. And so today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to actually go over to Reddit, which is a pretty popular platform for us in information security. And we're going to go on to one of the subreddits that are out there. We're going to go on to our NetSec students, which is a subreddit for folks who are, currently studying network security or its related subjects. And if you're familiar with our NetSec, which is one of the more popular subreddits where they've got a lot of kind of the current articles and current states of cybersecurity, then our NetSec students would be where folks go to really ask questions and try to figure out where they are in their career. And so what we're going to do is we're going to answer some Reddit posts. We're going to answer them virtually here on stream. We'll then take those answers, and hopefully they answer some questions for folks that are here. But I saw some questions when perusing Reddit the other day that I thought would be fantastic questions to answer on stream, and so I wanted to be able to provide that information for folks who'd be listening here. And so, without further ado, let's kind of jump on over and take a look at that. So as mentioned, so this is Reddit, right? We talk about our NetSec students. There are several subreddits, and we could go on an entire kind of binge on all the different types of subreddits that are out there, and we could do this on multiple ones. But I thought our NetSec students, the guys over there who are asking questions, the guys and girls and folks over there who are asking questions, are asking fantastic, really great questions. And so I kind of wanted to take this opportunity to kind of run through Reddit and talk about a couple of things that I saw. So the first and foremost here, posted by InfoSec Newb 123 about 3 days ago now. He's in his early 30s. He or she's in his early 30s. They're in the military. I'm thinking about getting out. I've been forced to think seriously about what I'm going to do when I grow up. That's good. It's a good thing. Doesn't have a technical background, but in his military job, he's done a lot of work on red teaming, risk assessments, as well as a lot of administrative side of information physical security. I find stuff like this fascinating. So he happens to be, so this link right here happens to link to a SIM swapping article here. So he finds SIM swapping fascinating. I've taken a few classes in data science type topics, but when I've talked to people working in the field about what I'm most interested in, they suggested that what I was really interested in was information security, network security. So my question is, what's the distinction between network security and the broader field of information security? Let's start with that question first. Network security is a subset of information security. Information security is what we refer to in the corporate world of the ability to safeguard the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of a corporation's data or their secrets, through their day-to-day business. If you think about any company, they have some form of intellectual property. That's why they're profitable, right? Whether it's, if you work for, a food company, it may be a recipe for something. If you're working for a tech company, it may be, some type of digital intellectual property. Apple, it may be, the specs to the new iPhone, or anything of that case. If you're a medical company, right, it could be patient records, personally identifiable information. It could be, if you're working for a manufacturer or device developer, it could be some type of intellectual property that gives you a competitive advantage. Excuse me. And so every company has data in which that they find valuable that they need to protect. And so information security is a term for what the entirety of a cybersecurity organization does inside of that company. So if you think about, you got a CEO that then typically has like a CFO underneath it, and then there's usually like a CISO or Chief Information Security Officer that then reports into that structure. That Chief Information Security Officer is in charge of that data protection layer or that information security layer inside of that organization. Typically, and I've mentioned this in a few other streams, right? They've got, a risk and governance, tower that reports to them. They've got a privacy tower that reports to them. They've usually got a security engineering team, a security architecture team, and a security operations team. And then inside of those teams, you've got various skill sets and whatnot. And so NetSec or network security typically falls within inside of either that security operations team or that security engineering team, depending on whether you're doing design and build or whether you're doing some type of implementation or operational type perspective. And so I would definitely, the distinction there is really the difference between a very direct skill in network security versus the broader function of an entire cybersecurity organization that does information security. When you think about that, from that perspective, you really only, this gets back to my analogy that I made a few streams ago, right? Which is, you're on a lake that's a mile wide and a mile deep. That entire lake would be the same as the entire information security and entire cybersecurity field. And, NetSec is only one very, very specific part of that lake. What's the way into the field for someone without a technical background? I have said this numerous times before. I will continue to harp on it. Your background does not matter when it comes to getting into cybersecurity. Whether you have a technical background or not, doesn't matter. I'll give you an example. One of the first pen testers when I got out of the military that I had the privilege of working with, his name's Trenton Ivey. He's now over at SecureWorks, in charge of their OffSec, kind of over there at SecureWorks. Brilliant individual. He's an amazing pen tester. He started out going for a PhD in biology of all things, right? So he started out very much in a non-technical career field, and then realized that even though he had loved computers, his whole life, that wasn't the career path for him, and so he upped and made a change to something that was more in line with where his passion was and what he enjoyed. Your background doesn't determine where you go in the future, if you don't let it to. And so I think that there's opportunities for anybody getting into this career field, whether you have a technical background or whether you don't have a technical background, to do something. Information security being as broad as it is, the technical side of it, the security operations, the security architecture, the security engineering piece of it is only one part of cybersecurity. As a career, there are other parts of cybersecurity as a career or information security whereby you have, like I mentioned before, risk and governance, whereby you're doing your risk assessments. You mentioned in your post that you've done a lot of work in red teaming and risk assessments, especially around information and physical security. If you've done risk assessments, you have a perfect place inside of a risk and governance organization whereby you can do those risk assessments for an entire enterprise, an entire corporation, and help them to assess their risk. So that they know which types of controls are the best types of controls to implement and to put inside of those systems. Similarly, there's policy development, there's privacy. Privacy is huge now. If you've done any privacy work, or if you're a former privacy lawyer, or if you've formerly done any type of data integrity work and things like that. Privacy's got a huge space, inside of information security organizations, especially with the advent of the CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act, as well as the GDPR, which is the data protection program that the EU has established. And so privacy organizations, inside of information security organizations, are a huge place for you to go. So there's absolutely tons of places for you to go if you don't have a technical background. But what I would also encourage you is that if the technical side interests you, getting into the non-technical side is a great way to get your foot in the door on a cybersecurity organization, and then continue to learn and continue to train on the technical side, and eventually make that jump over to the technical side of doing things. There's lots of advantage to having a conversation about, having more, you call it non-technical folks inside of a cybersecurity team. I've said this before on stream before, right? Everybody loves the hacking stuff. Everybody thinks the hacking stuff is the coolest thing in the world. When in the reality is that is such an infinitely small part of what it is that we do inside of cybersecurity. And so the need for non-technical folks to put their expertise to work inside the risk and governance, inside the privacy realms, and things like that is massive. We need that. And on top of that, if you have a technical background and this type of stuff interests you, there's a huge need for that inside of cybersecurity. And I would say that you don't always have to get pigeonholed into a technical background. He goes on to say, I, of course, willing to study on my own. That's good. I know there's abundance of online resources for becoming more technically proficient. That's correct. The fact that you are willing to admit that you're willing to study on your own is huge. I've said it before in previous streams. I'll continue to harp on it, right? As well as that, you have to be willing to do self-learning. Not that I think that we in cybersecurity, won't teach people how to come into this field, but there is so much data out there that the advice that we could give you would be, very, very, very minute compared to the amount of self-study that you could do that's out there, right? You'd learn much faster just by going out there and learning on your own than sitting here and asking questions and us having an 8-hour conversation back and forth on going out there. It's much easier for you to find parts that interest you and then come with very specific questions about those parts that interest you. Those are oftentimes where we can say, okay, now I can see where your head's at, what you're interested in. How do we dive deep into that? It is a rabbit hole and it does go deep. Okay. I've said this before. If you go back and listen to some of my other streams, right? You have to pull on that thread and you have to keep pulling on that thread until you take that rabbit hole as far as you think you want to go. Right. Having these tabs open for all this stuff, this is not uncommon. I mean, if you looked at any cybersecurity folks, I'm sure that they're in the same way. As a matter of fact, prepping for this stream, right? You may only see 4 tabs up here right now that I've got on the screen, but I've got like 5 different, so I've got 5 different browsers that are going on down here at the bottom as I kind of prep for the stream and kind of, make this information available for folks that are out there. So I think I wouldn't stress too much about having, 100 tabs open. Those are all things that you're interested in. If you look at my bookmarks, if I were to show my bookmarks, hundreds and hundreds of bookmarks, on the iPhone, you can, open pages and new tabs and, you just let them sit there. And on the iPhone, I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages on my iPhone of pages that I need to read or need to research or need to demo products and things like that. So, that is all part of the learning process. And what I can say is that if you're doing that, you're completely and totally normal. And I think you're doing exactly what it is that you need to be doing in this space. Outside of that, I've given you some pretty good career advice here, in terms of where to start. Go back and look at my other video, but I did a video on, top 4 things that you can do today to get started into cybersecurity. It sounds like you've done several of them already. And so you may only need to do, maybe the last 2 parts, of that. And I'd be more than willing to kind of help you, kind of figure out what those next parts are. If you want to reach out to me on Twitter or any of the other socials, I'll be more than happy to help you with that. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. What are some good resources for somebody interested in blue team? I would like to work as a blue teamer in security, and I'm struggling to determine what are some good resources for developing the necessary skills. to be a security analyst engineer. So I'm gonna take your question in a little bit of a different way, right? And let everybody know, right? This is a rarity. This is a unicorn, right? Somebody who is interested in blue team. So when we talk about red team and blue team, right, we're talking about the difference between folks who focus solely on offensive skill sets and folks who focus solely on defensive skill sets and protecting organizations. You literally just heard me say it maybe 5 or 10 minutes ago, right? That everybody wants to be a red teamer. Everybody wants to do pen testing, and in reality, that is not. That's such a very, very small part of what it is that we do. Blue teaming, protecting an organization, that happens every day. I've led several incident response organizations, several security operations organizations, and the folks who are on the front lines every day are the blue teamers. Those are the folks who are, looking at security alerts. Those are folks who are identifying threats in an organization. Those are the folks who are hunting for threats inside of an organization, actively hunting. And so if you're competitive at all, or if you like the military at all, being a blue teamer is the equivalent of being the modern day fighter pilot. Like if you want to talk about the ultimate nerd analogy, right? Today's blue teamers were the 1980s Top Gunners, right? So imagine yourself as Maverick or Goose sitting in front of that keyboard, fighting, those MiGs right in the air. That's what today's blue teamers are. Is they are on the front lines, actively engaged in cyber air-to-air combat on the regular in any organization. And so to see somebody, to see this user step right out and say they're interested in blue team and they want to proceed blue team, my hat is off to you, sir. I'm glad to have you on the battle space and welcome to it. Now, in terms of good resources for somebody interested in blue team, first thing is, there is a list down here for the threat hunting community. Definitely, anytime you see folks linking Discord, I would absolutely encourage anybody and everybody to join as many Discords as possible. You can get kind of overwhelmed. Again, it gets kind of an information overload where there's tons of information that's out there, but I would definitely recommend doing Discords. Unfortunately, that's kind of where it looks like some of the advice here is added. So, in addition to kind of giving this feedback over the video, I'll also reply to this post and give you some information as well. I would equate yourself with blue team technology. You'll see the Splunk banner, kind of over my shoulder here. Splunk is a fantastic, technology that is, they do have a free and open source version of the technology that you can download and start to use. So this gets back to, Fockets is in there. Blue team is where the money is. 100% true. 100% true. Blue team is exactly where the money is. But you can go and you can download Splunk for free. It's got a free license of it, and then you can go out there and you can start to pull in logs from your home computer. You can go out there and start to stand up a web server. One of the fun experiments to do, right, is to go out to DigitalOcean, stand you up a web server, turn SSH on, open to the internet, and then take all of those logs that are going to come into that server in DigitalOcean, put those into your Splunk instance, and just start watching what it's like to have your SSH server get pounded with brute force SSH requests literally every second of every day. And just that's it. That's two pieces of equipment, two easy things that are easy for you to do. You can do it with relatively little, investment out there, and you can then start having a system that's getting attacked on the internet on a day-to-day basis and having logs going into a system like Splunk. And then you can start to see what it's like to have to look at attacks in real time. There's books out there. If you're looking for books, if you're a book type reader, No Starch Press has got a lot of, they're kind of my go-to publication organization when it comes to looking for books, whether it's red team or blue team centric. They've got several books that are out there that talk about intelligence driven incident response. They've got books out there that talk about doing data analytics and other type of blue team activities. If you're that type of reader as well, it can kind of go either way with books sometimes, but I think No Starch Press has got a good amount of publications out there. If you're into ebooks, some No Starch Press books are available on ebooks, most are not. So definitely don't be don't be surprised if you see an overwhelming amount of books out there on Amazon or on any of the ebooks out there. When it comes to CTFs, Google does an annual CTF that is somewhat red team focused, but they do have some blue team elements on it. Anytime you see a CTF that's offering forensics as part of the CTF, those are obviously good CTFs for you to participate in. If you're part of an organization that does have Splunk, or if you know some friends of organizations that are using Splunk that can get you in, Boss of the SOC, a shameless plug for Splunk and Boss of the SOC. And I see Fuckets is in chat, and he just got done completing Boss of the SOC as well. And as well as I was chatting with some folks on the RNetSec students Discord channel about their experience in Boss of the SOC as well. But if you can get into Boss of the SOC is absolutely a fantastic, blue team type of CTF that you can do. You can go in there with zero level of experience, and they'll walk you through and they'll help you get everything from the basics of trying to do any type of investigation all the way up to some advanced threat hunting. And so Boss of the SOC is a fantastic CTF for you to get involved in. It's put on by Splunk every year. With how DEF CON and Black Hat are going virtual this year, you could probably benefit from having some, I think even Black Hat reduced their entry fee. Don't quote me on that, but I think Black Hat reduced their entry fee. I think DEF CON is doing a ton of virtual villages. I know the virtual red team village and the virtual blue team village are starting to get underway. Car hacking village is also going to be virtual, and so I definitely would look, especially this year, where that travel costs and entry costs are probably going to get reduced for a lot of those type of activities. I would definitely look at getting into Blue Team Village and trying to get access to some of the content that Blue Team Village is going to put out. But outside of that, there's lots of different hands-on things that you could do, to be interested in Blue Team. And I would highly recommend that you focus very, very hard on the hands-on piece of blue teaming instead of going out there and reading a lot of resources. That's I think that's one of those areas where you could benefit a ton from having hands-on resources. Okay. Move on to one of the last tabs. So this one's posted a day ago as well. Undergraduate to career advice. So this is somebody who's completed their undergraduate, looking to get out into the career. This is kind of a long post. Let's see what we've got here for this one. Waiting for commencement undergraduate, 4-year degree in information security. During this 4 years, I will have an opportunity to work full-time 5 days a week for 1 year, 4 months as part of a work-study program. Take professional certification part of the module. Right now, I'm in the process of completing eLearn Securities, EJPT. I'm also going to proceed with ECCP by eLearn Security during one of the semester breaks. I'm currently 24 years old and will most probably graduate at 27, 28 years old with 1 month IT related experience. I'm looking to get into offensive security like pen testing, red teaming for maybe about 1 to 3 years after graduation before pivoting into security management level when I'm about 31 years old. My 2 questions are, during the professional certification module, should I attempt OSCP given that I will hopefully have EJPT and ECGPT and then, or CISSP? Should I avoid OSCP since it's just a enumerate, try harder CTF focused cert, which may not reflect a real life pen test? All right, so let's do this one first. Let's talk about certification. So, you're doing the eLearn security certifications, which I think are fantastic. Good job. I think, if you go back to the video that I posted on the 4 things that you can do to get into cybersecurity, it sounds like you know what it is you want, and you've pulled on that thread. You've decided that you want to get into offensive security like pen testing or red teaming. I'm going to assume that you've potentially done, some self-study of your own, which is kind of point number 2. And then you're working on point number 3, which is, the certifications that you want to take. So it sounds like you've got a good plan. Sounds like you've outlined it out. I think the 2 certs that you have here are excellent examples of, certs that you can do to prepare yourself for the career field. Make sure that you're acknowledging, right? So I've got a little bit of a cynical approach when it comes to CISSP, right? CISSP looks great on paper, and it's definitely something that, HR teams look for when it comes to, putting you up for management. But there are actually, time and grade, if you will, requirements for CISSP. You will have had to have been in cybersecurity for a certain length of time to qualify to actually get a CISSP. And so I don't know that you'll actually have the amount of time that you need to for CISSP by the time you get out of college. So, I wouldn't stress too hard about this, especially if you're, looking to spend 1 to 3 years before trying to get into a security management level. I think you'll have more than enough time to try to go after your CISSP kind of at that point in time. Now, to the more controversial question, right, on OSCP. Having taken my OSCP, I can tell you that, this is the part that annoys me the most about OSCP. I taught for the SANS Institute for 5 years. I taught for the United States Air Force for a number of years. I helped the Air Force kind of stand up their functional training unit for cyber. Did courses like intermediate network warfare training, and as well as the the job qualification training for some of the offensive jobs that are out there in the Air Force, and that try harder mentality, I think, is the toxicity level that we have inside of our career field, especially on the offensive side, that is no longer conducive to the type of people or the type of career folks that we're wanting to bring into this. As a matter of fact, I actually wrote about this on LinkedIn. You can actually go out and read one of my articles on LinkedIn about this, and see that I think that it's this level of toxicity that has really stunted the growth of our career field. And so for no other reason of what you have listed here other than this right here, I would encourage you to shy away from OSCP, because I don't think that OSCP is a toxic free type of qualification. And quite honestly, if you're on the eLearn security path, that you've got right here, I think that you're actually doing really, really, really good in terms of pursuing down that. And I know that after EJPT and ECCPT, there's actually other eLearn security courses that I would highly recommend for you to pursue as well, including some advanced, pen testing extreme courses. They just released their V2 course as well, whereby you can, get something that I would call pretty close to an OSCP level cert, without, kind of getting beaten down by the community over this try harder mentality. With that being said, I think, getting all three of these certs, like, I just want to make sure that you're not focusing too hard on certifications more than you are actually learning. So one of the things that I would also try to encourage you to do is that some of these certs are going to have labs and lab content that you're going to be able to do with it. You may or may not get some lab content during your undergrad study, depends on the program that you actually have here. But I would definitely make sure that you do enough CTFs. You just heard me talk in the other post about boss of the SOC and things like that. And there's also a significant number of red team CTFs that are out there that I would absolutely encourage you to take part of as well, because those are going to help you far and away more, especially if this is your goal, right? Real life pen test experience. There is nothing like, you creating the scenarios for yourself with which you want to learn. Responder is a perfectly good example of that, right? And there's going to be some haters right there that are going to be like, LOL responder, right? Whatever the case is. But in reality, if you've ever sat in an information security organization and bought a pen test from Verizon, from Spectre Ops, from, insert company here, right? One of the first things that they're going to do is they're going to drop a box on your network, and they're going to run responder, and they're going to pull hashes right off the network. And so if you want to talk about doing a real life pen test, right? None of these courses are going to teach you how to run responder, right? So you're going to have to do that on your own. There's no substitute for standing up a Go Fish environment, out on DigitalOcean and practicing phishing some dummy mailboxes that you've got, with something like a Go Fish environment. Download, if you go back a couple videos ago that I had, where I talked about C2 environments and things like that. You can actually stand up your own C2 environment like Empire or something like that, make your own payloads, and then simulate an entire corporate phishing exercise all on your own. It doesn't require a whole lot of money, and you'll get more value out of that from a real life pen test perspective, versus these certs that you have here. kind of to your second question, I see we got a chat from It's Centurio about studying during lockdown. Let me finish this section right here, Centurio, and then I'll answer your question real quick. Is my career plan all right to get hands dirty into pen testing before actually moving to the management level? I think your plan is absolutely right. What I would say is that I think your time frames are a little off. You know, you kind of go from pen testing, red teaming in 1 to 3 years, and then security management level. And I think if I were to read into your message here a little bit, right, you're chasing this number right here. You're worried about being management by the time you're 31 years old, and I wouldn't stress about this too much, right? After 1 to 3 years of doing pen testing, you may or may not have a good grasp as to what it is that you want to do from a management perspective. You may actually, after 1 to 3 years of pen testing, realize that you want to go into threat hunting, or you want to go into blue teaming, or you want to go into risk assessments, or something completely different. And so I would actually say that your 1 to 3 years should be, you're focused on red teaming, but you're also focused on, what could potentially go into, other cybersecurity organizations. How do they work? How do they protect organizations? How does the IR team work? How does the IR team looking at your pen testing efforts, right, when you're going out there and doing pen testing? This 1 to 3 years could turn into a 5 to 10 year sabbatical as you try to, learn all the different aspects of a cybersecurity organization. And I think that would actually make you more well-rounded and make you actually more marketable, especially in the security management level, once you've proven that you've done a lot of other things. It's a very hard path to say, I'm pen testing, now I'm ready for management. Pen testing is literally only such a small part of an information security organization that doesn't make you ready to manage an entire cybersecurity, function inside of a cybersecurity team. Could you manage another red team? Sure. And if you're saying that you're going to go from pen testing and red teaming at the tactical level to managing a pen testing team, then that's a different conversation. But I think your time frame may be a little off, but I think what I would change mostly about this, right, is maybe you do pen testing and red teaming for a little while, and then maybe after 1 to 3 years, you're looking at other parts of a cybersecurity organization that may actually interest you more. OSCP is totally an HR filter, but what I will also say is that some interviews, most pen testing interviews that I've ever been in, actually do also give you an opportunity to do a hands-on as part of that interview, and so that's why I continue to get you to harp on doing some of the hands-on stuff. You hit the CISSP on the head right there. Your logic passes a sanity check, but you may actually have a hard time getting the folks at ISC Squared to sign off and giving you a CISSP just after 5 short years. So I wouldn't stress too much about that. If this is where your passion is, right up in here, I'd start here, and kind of getting back to my 4 things that you can do to get inside of information security. I would focus on pulling on that thread of red teaming, taking that rabbit hole as far as you feel like taking it, and then from there, kind of seeing where it goes and where you kind of go from there. So hopefully that's helpful. So now moving back over to chat, we did get a chat while we were kind of digesting this Reddit post. Just a question. I'm currently struggling during lockdown in terms of studying. You've got any tips? Currently doing SOC analyst as a scholarship. I think now during lockdown is the easiest way to be doing any type of studying. YouTube, if you're capable of watching just hours and hours and hours of YouTube video, there's so much YouTube content out there for you to digest. I know that, and I mentioned this before, right? If you go out there, and if DEF CON and Black Hat have ever been kind of pipe dreams for you, where you've thought about going, but you can't afford the tickets because I know Black Hat's, $3,000, usually to go to the in-person event, and there's the cost of going to Vegas, which if you've ever been to Vegas, is just not cheap. But I know that both Black Hat and DEF CON are moving to virtual settings this year because of the lockdown. Would absolutely highly encourage you to revisit, the idea of going to Black Hat and DEF CON in their virtual sense. I know that if you go to, a lot of the discords, like the blue team hacking village, the red team hacking village, the car hacking village, the wireless village, they're all looking at doing, virtual events as part of, DEF CON is canceled this year. And so those are still valuable, and they might actually be more fiscally, eligible for you. There have been several CTFs that have happened over the course of lockdown, that I would highly encourage you to go out there and look for and try to get involved with as well. In terms of if you're doing a SOC analyst as a scholarship, if you're still listening, if you can respond, I assume that you're doing some incident response type work. Wish we could have had this conversation maybe a week ago. We probably could have hooked you up with information on how to get into Boss of the SOC, because that actually would have been a fantastic CTF for you to actually to go to and put your hands on. I can't praise enough how awesome Boss of the SOC is. But I would definitely look for, in terms of studying. No, it was last week. Fockets is in chat maybe, and I know Fockets went to Boss of the SOC. He can probably give you some details on what days it was, but I think it was like one day last week, Thursday or something like that, a 1-day event. So, definitely have to look for other opportunities. Check Google, because Google usually has their CTF that also has some blue team components. But I tell you what, next stream, I will absolutely make a note to myself, and actually, if one of my moderators could make a note for next stream, we will do a CTF section on the next stream, and we'll cover blue team and red team CTFs on the next stream. And so if you tune into the next stream or tune into the VOD that goes up after that, we'll break down some red team and blue team CTFs, and we'll carry this conversation over what types of CTFs you can do over the next stream. We'll kind of hit some of those up. But definitely YouTube content. If you have the pocket change, I would definitely encourage you to look at eLearn Security. Oh, there we go. Awesome. Fantastic. There's Boss of the SOC. Thank you very much for the mod for that. eLearn Security. Okay, good. You're good. Good. You're doing your EJPT. That's awesome. So after you get done with EJPT, they definitely have a ton of blue team content that's up there as well. I definitely wouldn't shy away from doing some of, like, they just released Threat Hunter. I would definitely do Threat Hunter as well. I think that's a fantastic course. So kind of hearing where you're going at, I think some of the things that I just kind of mentioned as well, from like an environment setup, you can go get you a very, very small DigitalOcean instance. And I'm serious, very, very small DigitalOcean instance. It'll cost you like $5 a month to have this DigitalOcean instance stood up. Open you up an SSH port, put like a super complicated password on it that you don't care about ever remembering, get you a free version of Splunk, have those logs go into Splunk, and just watch traffic, and just quickly learn from there, just like how bad the internet is from like an attacker perspective, and start to kind of roll through looking at those logs. While I'm talking, can you kind of tell me like some of the work that you're doing as a SOC analyst, so that we can kind of maybe see what you're doing right now from a day-to-day work perspective? But what I would also say to that is anytime that you can create a lab environments are huge when it comes to really learning and doing your studying. And in lockdown, I think, it's really easy for us to say, well, let's go consume some YouTube content. There is quite a bit of YouTube content that's out there, but there is no mistake for hands-on experience. And even if you go back a couple of streams, I think it was on my top 4 things to get into cybersecurity stream. One of the things I said is that when you go for that HR check, when you go for that interview, at least when I interview folks, when I'm looking to hire talent, hire candidates, I look at their resume and I look at their certifications, but I also ask them what types of things that they do on their own time. What labs do they have set up? What self-learning are they doing? I'll get into it with them and I'll say, tell me about your lab. What types of machines do you have set up there? What types of scenarios are you running? What are you learning from it? What are you trying to accomplish from it? And I'll really dive deep into that self-learning part of it, because I think that in our space, we have a unique requirement that you have to have your hands on, you have to be able to do stuff. There's a misconception, right? So you're taking EJPT. If I recall correctly, I think that there are some labs with EJPT, but there's not much. But we have this misconception that we have to rely on vendors like eLearn Security or OSCP or SANS, or Cyberry or Udemy. I'm not trying to leave those guys out as well, right? To provide us with labs for those to be effective. And what I would say is that that's not true in the current state of where we are with cybersecurity. There's so much content and there's so much free stuff that you can do, even from a hands-on lab perspective, and it's not complicated to set up. And if you're in this space, it would actually behoove you to be able to do that type of stuff on your own. And so, hands down, would absolutely encourage you to do that. And so, hopefully that answered your question. If you got any more, then would love to do that. But we'll definitely do a CTF stream, because that's something we seem to have been talking about quite a lot here recently.